Good morning, everybody. It's absolutely a thrill to be here in front of the entire Brentwood School. Actually, the entire Brentwood School except my daughter, Kate Laumann-Wallace, who actually is out rowing today at the head of the gorge, but I'm delighted to be here. I'm a dreamer, a planner, a person who believes in the power of perseverance and hard work. By the time I was 11 years old, I had three major dreams for my life. W.O. Mitchell came to our school and read from a book, Who Has Seen the Wind? And from the moment I listened to W.O. Mitchell, I imagined that I would write a book one day. I've written two. In 1975, was watching television, and there was a great famine on in Ethiopia, and I saw the pictures that the children. I imagined that one day I would go to Africa, and I'd help the world's children. For 13 years, I volunteered for Right to Play, chairing the International Board of Right to Play. And in 1976, when I was 11 years old, I watched the Olympics on television, and I decided that one day I wanted to go to the Olympic Games. I've gone to 4 Olympic Games, become the world champion, and won 3 Olympic medals. Despite all the dreaming, despite all the planning, my life has been actually pretty unpredictable. It's had tremendous ups and downs, moments of glory and moments of despair, and tons of twists and turns in the road. And the constant in my life, truly, the constant has been change. My life is always changing. And in fact, change is happening in all our lives. Sometimes we don't notice it. It happens in tiny little incremental pieces. For instance, you don't really notice yourself aging between 20 and 30. You know, it's so subtle, but you sure notice yourself aging between 40 and 50. Trust me on that one. Sometimes change is like being hit by a 2x4 across the head. It happens suddenly. It comes out of nowhere. But the pain in change is that we don't expect it. And when we come to understand and embrace that change is part of every single day of our lives, it's part of our life, we lose our fear of it, and we start to really embrace our full potential. In 1996, I was watching the Olympics on television. There was a gymnast from Romania. Her name was Nadia Comaneci. And from the moment I saw Nadia Comaneci on television, she scored the first perfect 10 in the history of the sport. I wanted to be the next Nadia Comaneci. I could see myself leaping and jumping on the balance beam, 5'11", 165 pounds. Not exactly graceful. That was my first Olympic dream. And I tried the sport of rowing. I fell in love with it. And 2 years after I picked up an oar, I won an Olympic bronze medal in the 1984 Olympic Games. I went for the next 7 years with lots of disappointments, not winning another medal internationally. But in 1991, I realized a lifelong dream, a dream come true. I became the world champion, the fastest single sculler in the world. And I was looking forward to a great Olympics in 1992. But on May 16th, 1992, 10 weeks before those Olympic Games, I was broadsided by a men's pair in Germany. And their boat entered my boat. My boat shattered, driving 200 pieces of wood into my lower right leg, breaking my ankle, shredding my muscle, and doing massive skin damage. The doctor looked at my leg and he said, "The Olympics are over. You may row recreationally one day in the future. And you're going to walk again, but you're going to walk with a limp." So you can imagine what I'm feeling, right? I can't believe this has happened 10 weeks before the Olympic Games. But I also can't grasp the doctor's words. You're not going to the Olympics. I mean, I thought, that doctor doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know what great shape I'm in. You know, he doesn't know what I've been through. And I asked the doctor for a TheraBand, sort of like, you know, do you guys know what a TheraBand is? It's like this stretchy cord that you pull on, and I tied that band to the end of my bed, and I started pulling on it. This was not ideal Olympic training 10 weeks before the Olympic Games, but it was something that I could do. It was taking a small step towards that dream of going to the Olympic Games. And I used my imagination. I used my imagination to think of myself as strong and healthy. I used my imagination to think about my body healing. I used my imagination to imagine myself standing on that Olympic medal podium. 10 weeks after my accident, after spending 22 days in the hospital, I went to those Olympic Games in Barcelona, and I won a bronze medal. That performance was a seminal moment in my life. First of all, it showed me how you can be going on in your life, you can have a plan for your life, and suddenly something can happen and change the direction of your life. The accident changed the direction of my life. But it also showed me that you can use the power of your mind to adapt to any situation, to keep pushing on to recreate new adapted dreams. It also changed my life in a practical way. While I was in the hospital recovering from this accident, the country was following me. Literally, I was in every single newspaper, on the radio, on television, and I'd become well known without even realizing it. So I got back from the Olympic Games and I walked down Yonge Street in Toronto the very first day back, and every single person that I met said something to me, thanked me for competing for Canada. A taxi driver slammed the brakes on his taxi, got out of the taxi in the middle of Yonge Street, threw his arms around me and said, thank you for being Canadian. My entire life had changed. I was asked to do all these really cool things. I threw out a pitch in the opening games of the World Series when the Blue Jays were actually in the World Series. Sorry. I opened the Royal Winter Fair. I was asked to endorse things. I was asked to sponsor things. And I took advantage of all of these opportunities. And I flew across the country every single week to do something. Everything was incredibly, it was an opportunity. Sometimes it was pretty stressful. And then I moved on with my life. I got married. I bought a house. I bought a dog. I had 2 children, William and Kate. And after I had the children, I remember having this moment in my life where I thought, yeah, this is my life. It's complete. This is just so amazing. And then my marriage ended. And my life literally blew up. All the things that I had planned for, all the things that I had imagined, the life that I had held on to and said, this is my life, it was now over. And my response to that was to say, I am not going to let this affect me. 2 days after my marriage ended, I went up and I spoke in front of 3,000 people. I gave a keynote speech. I had a standing ovation. 2 days after that, I flew across the country to do more work. And I felt more need to provide financial security for my kids, so I took more and more jobs. And one day I was given the opportunity to go to Phoenix, Arizona. And I decided to take that job and take the kids and kind of combine it and make a holiday. And so we went with William and Kate. They were 5 and 7 at the time. We spent the whole day at the water slides. And we came in from playing all day on the water slides, and Kate started complaining about a tag that was bothering her, and it was, really bothering her, and could I cut the tag off? And my son started crying because he wanted to go back onto the water slide, and why did we have to come in? And I was stressed about the speech I had to give the next day, and suddenly I felt this huge amount of rage. I felt rage just overtake me, and I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I can't do this any longer. And I slammed the hotel room door on these 2 amazed little faces, and I locked the hotel room door, and I literally collapsed outside the hotel room. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. I cannot go on this way, driving, pushing any longer. And I did something I'd never done before. I asked for help. I picked up the phone, I called a friend, and that friend called a counselor. And I started to go to counseling. Now, I didn't really want to go to counseling. I thought it was stupid. What are you going to do? You're going to go in and talk about your problems. I didn't have any problems. I was an Olympic athlete. I was a high achiever. How could I have any problems this big to need to go to counseling? But when I actually went to counseling, I felt a little bit better. I got some tools in my toolbox. I felt a little bit more capable. But then on the third day, the counselor asked me to talk about my family, my parents. And I thought, what does that have to do with anything? I grew up in Mississauga, Ontario. I grew up in a house with lots of love, but also an incredible amount of, disharmony. My mom had an undiagnosed mental illness, and my mom had a complete inability to really feel compassion and connect with her children. She also had really big mood swings. One day, she would be laughing and singing, and one day she would be throwing plates and screaming. I never knew what mom I was coming home to. I didn't always feel safe. And so I needed to heal that past. I needed to heal that story. That first part of my life was about accomplishing. It was about doing everything right, about creating my life. I used my imagination. I used my will. I used my hard work to transcend my experiences, to create new experiences for my life. And I think that's what we all do in our early part of our life. We create our life through our will and through our imagination. But the second part of my life, I had to make the most difficult changes of all, internal changes. Changes to the way I thought about myself. Changes to the way that I thought and the inner dialogue that I had. Most of us get the equation wrong. We want to go to the right schools. We want to get the right marks to get into the right schools, to get the right jobs, to buy a beautiful house, to get married, to have kids, to have the perfect job. But these things, although worthwhile, they can't make us happy. Happiness is an internal state, and truly, it comes from a deep self-love. And at 40 years old, I had to really, truly learn to love myself. I had to stop that non-stop dialogue in my head that kept telling me I wasn't enough, that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't accomplished enough, that I hadn't done enough, that I should be taking advantage of all these opportunities and doing more with them, that I had to be a better person, that I had to be a better business person, that I had to be more beautiful. And I had to start being kinder to myself, realizing and accepting myself just for who I was, perfectly imperfect. It was great to aspire to greater things. It's great to have goals and dreams. But we also have to love ourselves from where we are, who we are in this particular moment. And what I started to notice is that as I became gentler with myself, I started to notice how hard I was on the people in my life, my friends, my colleagues, my children. And as I became gentler with them, they started to be different, and our relationships started to be different. By changing my inner life, my outer life began to change. Let me say that again. By changing my inner life, my outer life started to transform. I fell in love and got married again. I became the co-parent of two more teenage girls, one of whom is profoundly autistic. I wouldn't have had the capacity to parent Keely and her myriad of needs had it not been for the healing work that I'd done. I wrote a book, I changed my job, I changed so many things in my life. I started life coaching, helping other people connect with their internal life, to heal their internal life so they could create a better external life. As I said, the early part of my life, I spent a lot of time accomplishing, a lot of time acquiring things that I thought would make me happy. And what I learned in the last 10 years, it's true happiness. True happiness comes from accepting and loving yourself for who you are. The most transforming change we can make in our lives is to our internal life, to discover true self-love. Now that's an idea worth spreading. Thank you.